So I'm here at Vegan Campout today, and I'm joined with Patrik Baboumian. Did I pronounce it right? Because we were talking about it in the tent
It's
yesterday.
Baboumian, but
Baboumian.
that's not even like Baboumian is basically like the acceptable the Western pronunciation that I use myself to make it easier for people. The problem is the really correct pronunciation. It's an Armenian name,
Yeah.
and but the real Armenian pronunciation sounds like overly posh and weird if I do it. So it's Baboumian.
Baboumian.
But that would Baboumian, which sounds like some Roman kind of, I don't know, gladiator or ruler or whatever. Yeah, so I say Baboumian, and that's fine.
Oh,
And
I
it's
wanted to get it
I'm
right.
also fine with any
Okay.
mispronounced version.
Ah.
It's all good. I know that it's a weird name.
No, it's a great name. It's a great name, and it is strong. I like the kind of Roman emperor thing. So what's your talk going to be on at Campout?
Yeah, so the talk is on basically what I'm doing is I'm doing a fast forward of my own kind of way as a vegan activist, how I got into it, what was my main kind of question that I asked myself from the beginning when I made the decision to go vegan, which is coincides with me becoming an activist, because the reason was really that I found myself in a situation where I had just won a pretty big title. In that case, I was national champion in the heavyweight division in strongman, and in Germany. So you can call yourself the strongest man in Germany. You're basically officially the strongest man in Germany at that point. Of course, yeah, that was cool. And I started with strength sports when I was 14 years old. So at that point, I already had like 18 years or so of strength sports under my belt, basically. The last 6 of them being vegetarian. And when I went vegetarian, that was just I just did that for private kind of logical considerations, because I was always an animal lover.
Yeah.
And so at some point I realized that I was putting a lot of time into like rescuing wildlife. At that point we were living near a forest. And so there was always some wildlife rescues that we have. We would bring them to the vet. Sometimes we'd have some animals like in the house and just try to get them in better shape and then release them again. So while that was ongoing, and I think right at the time where I made the decision, we actually had like a little baby crow for several months until it was able to sustain itself. Started to ask myself the question that why are you in the one case, you see an animal in distress, and your natural reaction is that you feel bad for the animal and you want to help it. And for me, that was also always not just related to a specific species. Like obviously you have the classic animals like cats and dogs, and the animals that we have as pets that you kind of get socialized to be animals that are cute and lovable, while other animals are okay to kill and eat. But in my case, I like even before I went vegan, I wasn't discriminating between different species. Like for instance, if I would see a worm in distress, an earthworm, I would still try to help it. For me, it was always just I think it was like a projection thing. So if a life form is in distress and I see it, I would project myself into that life form. I would think if I was that individual sentient being, I would want the other side, which in this case was me, whoever is powerful enough to help me.
Yeah.
And so I would just do that. I would just basically treat other life forms the same way I would treat a human, right? If you see a human suffering, you're not going to ask like, are you like, do you like the same bands that I do? You're going to just help.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so I was just expanding that to animals. But I realized that I was not really doing that, because the animals that I was still consuming as a meat eater, obviously there was a disconnect there. And so it didn't take me long. It took me like a few days, I think, where I was kind of figuring that out. And it came down to the question for me personally, if I would actually kill the animals that I eat myself. So I just thought, okay, maybe you ate like 20 chickens while helping this one crow. Would you have killed those 20 chickens to eat them? And for me, the answer was clearly no.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, so you're just fooling yourself. You're basically just being dishonest to yourself. And so that was so. And I also have to say, because when I tell the story, it always sounds like, oh wow, this is such a guy who thinks logically, and then he just does what he believes in. It took me like 2 attempts. Like the first attempt ended after a few days, where we were We went out with some friends, and there was a place where they basically they didn't have any vegetarian options. They had a pizza that was not vegetarian, and so I got the pizza, and the idea was I would just give the salami that was on the pizza to someone else. Nobody wanted it,
Yeah.
and so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, if I throw this away, it won't change anything for the animal. So that was my first attempt. It's not like I'm not the perfect guy, like because I want to always make sure that people understand that although now I'm an activist, that I'm kind of like also really strict on myself, and now I'm like, obviously I'm taking everything super seriously. It wasn't right then. Yeah, it's a process to get there. So it took me basically 6 years being so that was the first attempt. And then right the next day I got back to it. That was the second attempt, and that then went for like between 5 and 6 years. But as a vegetarian, it was always just this personal thing. I was just trying to do what I thought was logical and just be in line basically with what I thought to be true.
Yeah.
And with my own like compassion with animals. I would never have considered myself an activist. And I was also so the pizza thing is just the one example. So I wasn't far as a vegetarian. I find that I wasn't far enough away from animal consumption, because if you still consume eggs and you still consume, like in my case, ridiculous amounts of dairy products, you're still consuming like animal adjacent, like that stuff comes out of animals.
Yeah.
So you're not like, you don't distance yourself from this whole idea that animals can, or parts of animals or something that is extracted from animals can still be something that you put into your body. That wildly changed when I actually went vegan then 6 years later. And the reason in this case was that I had just won that title.
Yeah.
And so what I realized is that overnight, because the media got super interested in this case of this guy who just eats salad, apparently.
That's what they think, right?
Yeah.
He's vegan, he eats grass.
And I was just vegetarian. So they thought that, although I wasn't even vegan yet. So basically, like I had a huge headline in one of the main tabloids in Germany, like Bild Zeitung, which is like I don't know, that would be, I think, in Britain, The Sun or something like that.
Wow, yeah.
So like complete garbage, but it doesn't matter.
But big readership.
Yeah, but a lot of people read it, right? So they had me like in my underwear in some warehouse lifting like a pumpkin barbell or something. So a ridiculous photo. And then the headline says, I eat only veggies and I'm the strongest guy in the country. So that's kind of how the media framed it, which obviously became like a little bit of a circus show.
Yeah.
But what I realized, and I was glad to kind of run that whole circus, because obviously it gave me a lot of
message out as well, right?
Like, and in the beginning I was just thinking, okay, so this just gives me coverage, and any coverage is good coverage. So I was doing that, but while I was doing it, I realized that I was now all of a sudden getting a lot of feedback from younger guys telling me that because I was out there in the media talking about being compassionate with animals and talking about all these things, not only opened that a lot of minds towards actually vegetarianism and veganism being something that is cool as a guy, which we know that still we have like a I think 75% or something like that imbalance between the genders. So a lot more women are actually vegetarian or vegan than guys are. So that was one thing. The other thing was some guys would reach out to me and tell me that having basically someone who is considered by the society as someone strong and tough, be there and kind of talk about compassion, gave them the permission to. They were like, I'm afraid to talk about those things. I totally feel the same way, but I'm afraid to talk about it because I don't want to be looked at by my peers as a softie.
Yeah, it was like weak, wasn't it, for guys? And
which is complete nonsense, because if you are compassionate, you have to be way stronger to actually be able to be compassionate. Because usually those who are cruel are actually those who are actually afraid.
The weakest people. Right?
Yeah, usually it's a clear sign of weaknesses to everyone out there who kind of finds themselves thinking about these concepts. If somebody is compassionate, that is pretty much the best signifier that someone is like coming from a place of strength, because you have to be strong to be able to, be open to see another individual and want to protect. Like basically protecting others is the biggest sign of strength, and cruelty is pretty much the biggest signifier that somebody has some kind of insecurities or something, just to put that out
No,
there.
that's a really good
But
point.
but that was the situation where I kind of understood that all of a sudden I was like a role model for like thousands of people out there. And that kind of put me into a little bit of a dilemma or in a conflict, because I knew, being a vegetarian, just for those private considerations, I knew I wasn't really doing the perfect job. So I knew if you want to just reduce animal suffering as much as you can, you don't want to consume eggs. You don't want to consume any dairy products and so on, because the way that is produced is horrible. And even like you have a lot of people talking about like backyard hens and so on. That's still horrible, because even the very existence of the animal that is bred to basically have what is the equivalent for the bird of the period, to have that every day, instead of 12 times a year, which is what a what a wildlife bird would have. They would basically have like 12, max 12 eggs a year, and then having them have that every day. I mean, that should give everyone a pretty good, So just the very existence of the animal is already a cruel thing. So, and it doesn't make it better to have them in your backyard. So I knew all of that, but at the same time, I kind of still thought that at least that there, because I was almost not consuming any eggs already, even as a vegetarian. And talking about backyard hens, so my uncle had actually hens in his backyard, and he would sometimes bring eggs. Those would be the only eggs I would actually like consume as eggs. But then obviously you have like hidden eggs in all kinds of products that you're buying. So that was just my like half-ass way to try to do something that makes sense. But I was having ridiculous amounts of dairy, because I thought that the dairy protein is basically like vastly superior to any plant protein source. And it was kind of like the backbone of my whole diet, which is obviously, as a strength athlete, that's
it. You
quite
need the protein, right?
yeah, quite an important part of your whole game. And so I thought it's probably impossible to go vegan, so do actually what I think would be the right thing to do, and still be able to maintain the same level of performance. And that was what was really holding me back. But now that I was in this situation, so I have like a very limited capacity to have an inner conflict like that, and remain basically not in line with what I think is the correct thing to do. So it took me a few weeks after winning the title and having all that stuff going on, where I started to think, okay, so this is probably going to be challenging. Because the vegetarian thing was always easy for me. I never liked meat. As a child, I was actually basically forced into eating meat, because I used to always spit it out when I was a small child. And so my mom started basically making almost like a porridge or something,
hiding the meat.
Yeah, she would basically put everything in a blender, and kind of make a pudding out of it, and I would still find the fibers, and I would still spit them out, because it just felt unnatural to me.
Right, I was the same. It's like I don't know what it is. I don't want it. I don't want it in the...
And you get back into that very quickly once you actually go vegan. I felt like, as a vegetarian, I never detached from that, because, as I said, as long as you have other animal products, you're still kind of in that space. But once I went, like for instance, as a vegetarian, if I would walk down the aisle in the grocery store where all the meat is, there was no reaction or anything. But then when I went vegan after a few weeks, when I was in the supermarket the first time, and I actually like smelled meat, there was a visceral reaction in my body, where I thought like, wow, this is an emotional response, and it felt weird and kind of wrong in all kinds of ways. And I never had that as a vegetarian. So I think there is actually a big difference between going from the one to the other. And as I said, also vegetarianism, because I didn't like meat, was super easy. And so, but dairy had always been something that, like, as a child, I always loved it. in school, I had a nickname where other kids would tease me as the milk boy, basically, because in the breaks you would always see me in a corner with like a whole pack of milk,
Oh,
and I
okay.
would just shove it down because I started training when I was
Gonna say,
14,
yeah,
very, very,
yeah.
very early on.
Was it from the Incredible Hulk? Is that where you
That
got
that
the
was
idea of your little
the
kid?
first kind of trauma and inspiration, I guess. I was 4 when my parents would watch that, or I cannot have been 4 because when I was 4, my dad died. But those are like one of the memories that I have from where he was still around. My parents would watch the Incredible Hulk series, and back in the day, a bodybuilder actually, embodied the monster version of Bruce Banner, which is the Hulk. So it was Lou Ferrigno, the bodybuilder's name. And so this fascination of, being muscular and kind of being super strong, that kind of got imprinted in my brain
Yeah.
very, very early. But I started actually training when I was 14.
Yeah.
So when I was in school, most of the time I was already training, and so I was already trying to get all that protein in. So having, milk every break and so on. And so that was kind of part of my whole personality. And so that felt to me like a huge challenge to
Yeah.
go that next step and actually get like never drink a glass of milk in for the rest of your life. That sounded like super scary. That's always also what if somebody asks me if they want to go into it, and then they ask what's the best way, I always tell them that I know that it's scary to think about all those things that you like and think you're not going to have them anymore. And I always tell them, do it just for 4 weeks, because that's not scary. Everybody can do anything for 4 weeks, like basically the veganuary concept,
Yeah.
right? Just do it for a certain amount of time. And in my case, after 3 weeks, I was like, holy damn, I should have done this like 6 years ago. Why did I?
Easy, right?
Yeah, and it's not only was it easy, but it also solved a lot of problems that I had as a vegetarian. So as a vegetarian, I just want to mention one, just to not over expand on it. But one of the issues that I had was I was chronically iron deficient. I would even get supplements. So I would regularly get supplements from the doctor because my iron values were always, the blood work was always bad. The iron was low. And so the doctor gave me supplements, and I was still deficient. The supplements didn't even do anything. That just disappeared magically when I went vegan. And then obviously that was a shock to me.
Yeah.
And then I did my research, and I found out that there are certain foods that block iron intake, which perfectly describes why I would take supplements. So if you have like something that blocks absorption, you can take all the supplements in the world. If the absorption is blocked, they're not going to get into your system. And so one of those foods is milk.
Yeah.
So when you have ridiculous amounts of dairy products, there's a high chance that you might actually get problems with iron deficiency, which is this makes it so important, for instance, when research is done, that the research is like the categories in the research are well defined. Because in a lot of cases, vegans and vegetarians get lumped together into one category. And if you compare that, for instance, with meat eaters, you're going to have a lot of people who maybe have a diet similar to mine, where they leave out the meat and replace it with dairy products. So if you have a lot of dairy products, as a vegetarian, you might be iron deficient, but it's not because you're not eating meat. It's because you're blocking your system with all that dairy. So in my case, that was the case. And so once that was gone, there was no problem anymore. So my iron is perfect since then. And I'm not even supplementing. Like I have a multivitamin thing that I take where there's some iron in that. But back then I would take like high dosage iron supplements. That's not the case anymore.
It's so interesting. I never even think about it. I literally take an iron supplement maybe twice, like when I've got my period a month, and that's it.
Yeah, I would always do that as a woman, just because obviously the blood loss needs to be replaced. So I would always recommend to kind of counteract that with a supplement, and you're fine. But as a male, usually you're not as you don't have that problem of blood loss. So that way, I feel like, at least for me, just what's in the multivitamin is plenty. So and what I also have to say is, two of the other things that actually also block iron intake are black tea, black coffee. I have ridiculous amounts of coffee.
And you're fine.
It seems to be way less efficient at blocking the iron intake than the milk, because like I have a full can of coffee. I make it in the morning and I have it throughout the day, which is I should really reduce that, but
All got our folly.
it just tastes too good. So
Say it's all right.
and it's not touching my iron in any way, so it's not a problem at all. So that shows how much more potent the dairy must be, or the ridiculous amounts that I was having of it. So basically, going vegan just taught me that first of all, that vegetarianism as an intermediary like kind of thing to do, I don't recommend that to anyone, because usually, if somebody asks me, I just tell them that I lost like 6 years of my life experimenting with it, and also questioning my decision to actually go vegetarian because I was having all these issues, and all of them just disappeared after going vegan. So what I tell people is that, first of all, do your research, because you have to have a certain understanding of, of what you're doing with nutrition. Otherwise, you might just do stupid stuff and not know that you're doing stupid stuff. Because so that's important, because there is also these cases where you have like some kind of social media personalities with a lot of reach, and they go vegan for a while for whatever reasons. And then sometimes they fail and they go back to something like some cases might just swing to carnivore diet.
Oh, yeah.
And so what I think is happening there is that some people who are just drawn to extreme behavior take veganism as one manifestation of that extreme behavior. So they adopt veganism to basically just be able to kind of channel their extreme behavior tendency into that.
You see that in the news sometimes. There's people who will just have the raw vegan diet. They won't necessarily get it, or they'll have an eating disorder.
That is exactly where I was going.
Sorry, I'm so interrupting.
No.
Carry on.
No, it's perfect.
It works like you're a psychologist.
No, it's perfect because it validates kind of like I've been thinking about this for years, but I've been always reluctant to speak about it because I feel like obviously you don't want to kind of hurt any feelings, and I don't want to make anyone feel bad who is raw vegan for whatever reasons. But it always seemed to. First of all, I totally support having a lot of whole foods, and having a lot of a raw portion in your diet is always going to be a great thing. But to restrict yourself to like 100% be raw, that doesn't make any sense in my book, because that just takes away so many extra options that you would have. Like for instance, let's say I'm I'm traveling. And I'm somewhere, and it's already ridiculous to only be able to have vegan options because society only gives you so little, right?
Yeah.
So then if I would now also not be able to just grab that burger or grab that sandwich that is somewhere that is vegan, but not raw or whatever, or just grab those fries. They're obviously not raw. If that was the case, I would just make my life as a vegan even more, like the challenge just even bigger, which might be fine for some people. But then the problem is if you don't do it the right way, because your options are getting even more restricted, you might end up with a too kind of imbalanced diet. Like some raw vegans eat even just fruits, like for instance fruitarian and so on, and so that might actually get you into a bad place. And what I kind of see from just those cases that I was speaking of some social media people, a lot of them were actually raw vegans.
They're extreme cases, aren't they?
So that gives me this theory that raw veganism is like an outlet for just people looking for a kick, for like the extremes version of something. And I think the most important thing for me to not go like fully raw is, I mean, I'm fine with just grabbing something that is raw, and I'm always like, a smoothie is always gonna make me feel like a way more healthy option and be so much more kind of satisfying in that sense. But at the same time, I don't want to restrict myself because there is no reason. Because there are ethical reasons, or really good, logical, ethical reasons to go vegan, but there is none to go raw. Like other than it being healthy, but then I question if it's healthy to go 100%, because at that point it gets it just gets restrictive and really hard. And so that's why I've always been pretty skeptical there. And it's also funny because a lot of raw vegans actually kind of approach me and they're like, yeah, you should try this out. And I'm always trying to be respectful, but at
Yeah,
the
of
same
course.
time, I'm thinking like,
You have to do what works for you, right?
yeah,
And
of
maybe raw
course.
veganism. Like I was speaking to Heather Mills, and
Mhm,
she did. I think she was raw vegan. I think for like 2 weeks when
mhm,
after her accident,
mhm.
and that was like great. It set her back,
Yeah.
but she's not now, you know, and that
Yeah,
really helps, like
that's
a reset.
actually a good point. I think it's
Yeah,
great for a phase
yeah,
to kind of, I mean, I don't want to use the word cleanse because that is attached to so much unscientific stuff, but basically to give your body kind of like a pause or like a reset
yeah,
might be fine. But to do it basically as your main thing over time, I don't know. And the fact that a lot of raw vegans actually kind of swing back to some other extreme diet. Like I know two prominent cases of social media people going from raw vegan to then carnivore, which is
oh, it's crazy,
completely
right?
mind blowing.
It's the
And
ethical side of it, you know. Even if we just take out your diet, to go from, you know, it's
yeah,
baffling. It's so extreme. Like,
it only makes sense if
yeah,
you basically adopt. I think if this sounds a little bit self-important, but I think it makes sense when you adopt this perspective that it's people who just want to kind of have a diet that is as extreme as possible,
yeah,
and so then the ethics are really not in front of the whole thing. And so in my case, because the ethics are what this makes all the other decisions, yeah, that's not never going to happen to me. And I also don't think that we were talking about 1.5 decades being vegan now. So
yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure that
Yeah, you know,
this is going to be what I'm
that's
going
gonna
to do
be
for the rest of my life.
longevity.
It just feels too good.
Yeah,
And I don't see any reason to change anything. But yeah, that's also because I'm not restricting myself in any way other than making sure that I just consume products that where no animal exploitation goes into it. So it's not just a diet; it's also then obviously a lifestyle thing where you look at clothing, you look at your cosmetics and stuff. Not that I use a lot of cosmetics, but all those things like shampoo or whatever you use, and so that is just what makes all the decisions for you. But if you have like if you're just chasing like a lifestyle thing and you just want to be just want to try this new thing out, yeah, you can totally go from raw vegan to carnivore. And it's both not probably not going to be on a solid ground when it comes to the actual decision making.
yeah.
Wow, that was
No, it's really good. No,
we
it's
went
good.
quite deep on
No,
that
I
one.
like it. I like it a lot. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, as you say. I mean, what is it that kind of keeps you vegan? You know, when you wake up
Mhm.
each day, what's the kind of thing that keeps you vegan?
I think it's because when I started off, I had this naive idea that because I was seeing a lot of the reactions of people that I positively influenced,
Mm,
and it was quite a lot. So I had this naive idea that after 10 years or so, everybody would be on board and like the whole world. And for a while, it actually looked like that. So basically, I started off in 2011,
mm,
and I think like pretty much the first decade it was just going up and up and up.
yeah.
And the only thing that I saw basically putting an end to that upwards trend is I think has been the pandemic,
Mm,
and I think that also has to do with the fact that vegan products are still sometimes like at least if you want to go for like replacements, so the like the easy options and then the kind of that makes it easier to transition. Those replacement products are just still quite a bit more expensive than the like it's more expensive to have a meat replacement usually than meat,
which is
which
crazy,
which
isn't
shouldn't
it?
be like that
No.
because the funny thing is soy products have existed way longer than veganism has been something like veganism exists for a long time already, like for 80 years or something like that.
Mm,
But as a concept, I
yeah,
should
yeah.
say, coined by the Vegan
It,
Society,
it's
obviously,
80 years this year.
over here in Britain.
Yeah.
But but the thing is, veganism, like being something that is more mainstream, has happened within the last 2 decades, I would say, of it going basically to being mainstream enough so that we have the products everywhere, and we can buy stuff just in the supermarket. And so back in the day, people would get their meat replacements from Eastern European countries, for instance, and those meat replacements were a cheaper way to have something that is like meat but is not meat.
Yeah.
So that shows that actually it should be easy enough
Yeah.
to keep it. At least soy, like soy is a super cheap way to kind of have meat replacements. So I think there's different factors that go into it. One of them being that if you have a specifically vegan product, it's always going to be produced on a smaller scale. So scales of economy are going to be different, and so on. So there's some business things. There's also hidden subsidies that go into animal agriculture that just
huge amounts.
yeah, because meat shouldn't be as affordable as it is.
Yeah.
And so it is being held artificially, basically being held cheap in hidden ways by subsidizing it. For instance, plant milks. I don't know how it is here in Britain, but in Germany we have two different taxing basically for VAT. We have two different VATs, and one of them is for food, and food is taxed with 7%. And then everything that is like not food or considered a luxury product or a medicine or a dietary product is in the higher category, which is not 19%. So almost
like a luxury item.
Yeah, a luxury item. And plant milks are still in the luxury. And I don't get it. Like it's the product that causes less damage and so on.
Yeah, we do the same. It's like 50% surcharge because of the dairy industry being so heavily subsidized that it would be the same, but it's been subsidized. So it looks like you're paying excess, but actually it's just that they're being covered. It's wrong.
In a level playing field, it should be way cheaper than the animal product option. And so that's a huge problem, obviously, especially for people like coming back to the pandemic. If you're already struggling and now because of the pandemic, you might lose your job because the place, I mean, like a lot of hospitality places completely closed down, or people, because they had to close during the shutdown, people had to look for a different way to get money. So a lot of people started struggling financially. And if you have that, and then you basically look at the vegan option being more expensive than obviously if you go just for rice and legumes, there is always, just don't want to make it sound like veganism in general has to, because this is also a talking point of people trying to make veganism look like a more of a challenge than it actually is. So there is always a very cheap way to be vegan, but if you want to have all those like replacement products, they're going to be more expensive. And now you just have a certain budget. So I think that kind of took away a little bit of the momentum that the whole thing had.
But then again, there's more awareness than ever now, so it might be just that, people were kind of like learning about it, and now it's like, okay, maybe they're staying, and maybe it's going to continue, and then it's slow,
That is a very good point. So progress shouldn't be just measured in consumption, but it should also be measured in people's opinion. And I think you're absolutely right. I think people's opinions still develops and goes on. But to come back to your question, so my naive idea in the beginning was, this is going to go quickly and everybody's going to be on board and we're going to make this happen and this is all great. And it's like now after 1.5 decades, I see that that's not the case. And so what really keeps me going is kind of that I see that there's just so much work out there to be done. And especially coming from a place where it was always about the animals. As long as I see animals out there being exploited and all the horrible stuff that happens that we humans basically do to our fellow earthlings, I'm going to keep going, because I feel like I just want to be useful. And it feels to me that non-human animals are basically the most vulnerable sentient life out here that needs protection. And for me, it has always been about trying to be useful and trying to protect. So as long as the world looks like it looks, I'm going to try to somehow be useful and make it better.
That's beautifully put. It's that superhero thing. It's like, thank you.
I would say it's just trying to be useful, really. And then at the end of the day, I think we all do it, but some of us just like, I used to be ignorant on some things, and that was the reason why I was a meat eater at some point. And I think as long as people are willing to listen and are willing to update their opinion, I'm fine with that. What frustrates me is when I see people who actually know that they're on the wrong track and they don't want to listen because they just want to feel good being on the wrong track. That is frustrating.
That's where your work comes in, right? That's why we do what we do. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me, Patrik. It's been an absolute pleasure. Like, really, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Fun.